Hey, today I want to show you how to mend and knit fabrics. I've put together a kit that comes in this super cute little project bag, and it has everything we're going to need for multiple different kinds of fixes. We've got a spring tension embroidery hoop here. We've got this little tin, which we'll get to in a second. We've got a binder clip. We've got a darning egg. And inside the tin, we have this little elastic. We've got some fun threads, or yarn really, soft weight yarn with some nylon for a nice, strong reinforcement. We've got some little bulb pins, and we've got the slightly larger plastic pins. Plus there's two bent tip tapestry needles. There's a large one and a small one. And then also a needle. There's a little needle in here, let's see. Yeah, so, nice sharp little needle for making repairs on like t-shirts. Okay, so first, let's talk about what we need to fix. This sock has just broken a thread in between, and when you kind of lay it flat, you can see that those loops are still there. I'm just missing the one row of thread between them. So you could almost like just cinch it up and it would close nicely. So this method, we're going to use the duplicate stitch method for that repair. We've also got, this will be in another video, but just to show you the difference, this is a complete blowout. This piece is completely lost from its surroundings. We've got jaggedy edges over here. This is a hole that needs to be patched with the woven method like that. So here's another patch on the other sock. Clearly my spouse really loves these socks. He wears them a lot. So I've repaired them a few times. And actually, we got that little dude that could use a duplicate stitch repair too. So take a look. Let's see. We've got this one thread that's just barely breaking right there. Let's see if it gets better light on it. So you can see that it's still got the tracery of the stitch lines. It's just thinned out right there, and so it's almost broken. That's a perfect candidate for duplicate stitch. So actually, maybe we'll start with this one. Okay. So first thing we need, clear some space. I'm going to use the darning egg, and I'm going to stick it in there right behind the messed up bit. Okay, so I'm also going to, let's see, I'm going to fold up the back of the sock. I'm going to use the binder clip to hold that. Let's see, one more. Just to keep it out of my way so it doesn't catch on any of the threads or anything like that. Okay, and then I'm going to use the elastic also to close off the end of this tube to keep the darning egg in there. Okay, so the elastic and the binder clip are really the best for small tubes, things like socks. Anytime you've got like a small opening that you can't really put, a whole hoop in, because this whole hoop would need to, like maybe upper part of a sleeve, it could fit, but that's about it. Nothing smaller than that. So let's fix this little hole. The really nice thing about the darning egg is that it is light colored, so you can see through the tracery of the sock. Sorry. Okay, so I'm gonna get my small darning needle, because this is a fingering weight yarn, so the small darning needle is the right size. And actually, I've got some other colors. The kit will come with some random colors, but I think I want to use this one. And I won't need a lot for this repair. Let me just do maybe like a foot worth of yarn. And I'm going to thread it onto my tapestry needle. And actually, before I get any further, I need to take that off so that I can move this. I can come out from the inside so that I've got an end. Okay, so let's take a look. So let me get my needle up in here. We start to thin out right around here, and then it's thin all the way over to here. So let's say let's come out somewhere that it's solid. So how about right here? I'm at least a full row below the loose bit. So I'm going to come out, I'm going to make sure that there's just a little bit of thread left inside. And then I'm going to secure it with the elastic. Okay. All right, so now I've got my egg set up, and I'm going to start down here with this full row. I want to make sure that I reinforce this row. So I'm going to go through the top of the stitch, so you can see that I came out basically at the base of this stitch right here. So I'm going through the top and tracing it around, and then, and then back through the bottom. Let's move this out of the way so you can see. So back through the bottom of that stitch. And I'm basically just remaking these stitches. And when I get to these little tiny bits, I just want to be really careful so I don't break them. And I'm just duplicate stitching over the existing fabric. Okay. And to make this patch really sturdy, I want to make sure that I go back, or I mean that I go past the original problem. So when you get to purl stitches, it's a little harder. It's a little easier to do this in stockinette. But I'm gonna follow that line of stitches for a couple more stitches. And you don't actually have to keep in the ribbing. You could just do stockinette over these stitches. It would be fine. But I'm obsessive, so I'm gonna follow the pattern. Okay, so I'm at the point where this is the stitch I want to finish on, but I don't want to come out on the stitch next to it. So I'm going to go down into the base of the stitch, which is here, and then come up at the base of the stitch above it. So just catching one of those little floats in between. Okay, so now I'm ready to retrace the next row, which actually has the broken, well, mostly broken stitches in it. So I'm gonna come out here and do this purl that's really weird. And that goes up. And you basically just follow the line of the stitch. And if you're working with something like a variegated yarn, it's substantially easier to see where that line of stitches goes. So if you wanted to practice duplicate stitch, that would be a good way to do it. Okay, so I'm actually at the broken stitches now. So I'm at the base of one of these really thinned out stitches, and I'm going to make sure that I follow it around and go through my doubled up stitches, my duplicated stitches, come back up, top of the stitch, back through the bottom of the stitch to the next one, and then up through there. Okay, so I'm at the other end again. And your patch doesn't need to be square, but you know, I started mine so that it would be square. Okay, so I'm going to go into the base of the stitch just like I did on the other side, and then up at the base of the stitch above it. And now I'm ready to trace the next line of stitches. And the really nice thing about this method is that you can see exactly which ones are thin as you go past the stuff above and below. So like I know I need to do a couple more rows of this at least. So I'm going to come out here. I'm going to follow that purl, which is a little bit trickier. I really like to do these with a contrasting thread. I kind of, you know, if you're gonna mend something, also it's handmade in the first place. So, you know, why bother with an invisible repair when you can have like a fun color? It sort of tells the story of the life of this piece, you know. Okay, so I'm up into the next row, and I would really suggest doing this kind of repair with a bent tip needle. It makes a huge difference to be able to kind of scoop through the stitches rather than trying to stab back and forth. So go up here and through. Okay, we're almost getting there. Okay, so you can see that this line is still pretty thinned, those little stitches. Sorry, I keep bumping the camera. Okay. And I just want to make sure that I don't end on a thin stitch row. I want to go all the way to a solid row so that I can make sure that my repair is going to stay in place for a while. So like, we're getting there. I'm going to do the next row as well. So I'm going to go up to the row above, and that'll probably use all of my yarn. That'll be perfect. So I'll trace this next row. There we go. I had the bent tip pushed to the wrong direction. Okay. Get in here. There we go. Okay, let's do this purl. Wonky, wonky purl. One step at a time. Trying to do this on camera is always interesting because I'm kind of looking at it through my phone instead of looking at it the way I normally would. It's an extra layer of complication. Okay, so there's just basically tucking it into the inside left. So what I'm going to do is take the elastic off, take the binder clip off, take this egg out, and then put my needle at the base of that stitch. So you can see I've got half that stitch done. I just need to put my needle at the base of that stitch and into the inside. Okay, now I'm going to weave in the ends, both of these ends. So you can see this is what our patch looks like from the inside. It's mostly on the external, which is fine because that's where the row was happening. So I'm going to take these ends and just weave them in like I would normally with any other sock. So I like to do a diagonal on the purl bumps in one direction, and then diagonal in the other direction. And since this is in a really high impact area, this is the back of the heel, I'm going to do one more diagonal. And the thing about catching these purl bumps to even your ends, it means that it's not going to show into the front. So you can see, like, this is where I've woven in my end, but you can't see the color at all. So I'm going to snip this, and I'm going to weave in the other end, which is a little shorter, but it'll be just fine. Okay, so I'm going to go diagonal from where I am. And actually, you know what? I'll show you another technique here. So this end is a little short. So what I'm going to do actually first is use my needle to make the diagonal weave before I thread onto. There we go. So I've got back and forth. So I'm going to then thread, and it'll pull through, going in both directions, and then I can just even it out. Okay, so my end is woven in. I'm going to snip it, and that is our repair. That's a duplicate stitch repair. And we kept that purl in, so huzzah. Join me again for some other mending tutorials for knit fabrics. I'm going to be doing this woven patch in a second, and so they should all be in the channel at once. And I'm also going to be fixing a tiny hole in a t-shirt. Hey, I'm actually back to show you something else. So here I have this one line that just needs duplicate stitch, and there's a little bit of zhuzhing I'm going to do with it. Hold on, again, I forgot to put my thread through before I wrapped it all around with the elastic, so I'm just pushing it through to the inside. Okay, so I've got my thread coming up in the row that I need to fix, and you can see that these loops kind of alternate. So we're going to start with the straight duplicate stitch like we did before over the existing fabric. And this one I'm doing a more matching color yarn. I think these socks already have enough color, so I'm just going to do something that matches a little bit more, but still slightly visible. So we get into this area where it's kind of fuzzy because there's some wear on the socks. It's okay to snip off some of that fuzz. Just make sure you don't make the repair worse. So I'm going to go over that and under. And the place that this takes me, I'll just do this without getting it too dramatic. Okay, so the place that this coming down at the bottom of the stitch takes me is actually following this little loop. So what I want to do is take this little loop and join it to the loops above. So I'm kind of taking the place of this tiny loop. Okay, because those loops are just hanging out. So we're going to go to the next stitch. I come out at the base of it, and again I'm going to join it to those loops above. So you can kind of see where the V structure continues up here. So I'm just recreating what's missing in this one row. Let's see. That's behind that stitch, not through it. So I'm anchoring all of these little loops to make sure that they're not going anywhere, that we're not going to lose them, they're not going to unravel like a dropped stitch. Okay, we're almost there. Gotta go through that one, and then through here. And my tension here is real wonky, so I'm gonna go back through and zhuzh them a little with my needle. So like, yeah, I got way too much yarn in that one. So I'm gonna take it and move it to the next stitch, and the next stitch, and the next stitch, until I get it back into my working thread. That's another thing that these bent tip needles are super good for. This is the same way that you fix a snag. If you snag like your sweater, you take the extra thread from the spot where it's big and loopy and you just bring it back through. Let's see, actually that should go right here. Okay. Okay, and then so I'm back to solid fabric here. And I'm gonna do a little extra reinforcement in the row above it. So I'm gonna jump up here. So really the only thing that was a hole was in this row, but there's some thin threads in the one above. So I'm gonna rotate it and do the row above it as well. Let's see. We're starting to get into the decreases here, so it's a little hard to see, but we'll make this happen. And you can see that I've actually flipped my my darning egg sideways in here, because it was a repair that really needed to be longer than it was wide. So you can use your darning egg any way you need to. And I've got the elastic on there to hold it in place so it doesn't slip out and fall all over the floor. If you wanted to do this more invisible, you could definitely use a yarn that's closer to the original yarn, or if you actually had any of the original yarn left from knitting socks, assuming that you hand knit the socks that you're fixing, then you could use that as well. This technique also works on commercially knit socks. If they're a thinner knit, a thinner yarn, you can use a different kind of thread. So I wouldn't recommend doing the duplicate stitch with a thread that is substantially larger than the thread the original thing was knit with. So like if you're talking about a fingering weight sock, I wouldn't use a worsted weight to darn it with this method. If you're talking about a commercially knit sock, I would recommend not using hand knitting yarn. I would recommend either you can get like wool and nylon reinforcement thread. Okay, so here's our finished repair. I'm going to stick this to the middle for a second. Okay, or if you want to do repairs on a commercial sock, I recommend something like this. This is called coordinate. It's thicker than a standard thread. It's still nice and like drapey. It comes in a bunch of different colors. I find that you can get like Gutermann coordinate. This is Gutermann coordinate. You can get that at like Joann's fabric store. They tend to carry not so many colors, so it might be worth ordering it online if you're trying to match something. But this Mettler has a bunch of different colors, and one of my local sewing shops, apparel fabric stores, has Mettler. So as you can tell, I have a lot of Mettler because lots of colors. Yeah, so coordinate. All right, so I'm ready to bring this to the inside and weave in the ends. So I'm going to take off my elastic. Drop my egg out, which it gets caught in the heel. That's always fun. Okay, and then I'm going to, I've got this stuck where it needs to be, right? So I'm going to hold the needle and the fabric. So I'm kind of pinching in here, make like a sock puppet, and then pull the whole thing back out. Okay, so here's my tail end and my first tail end, and I'm going to weave both of them back through. So I'm going to go diagonal, purl bumps. And since this is the toe, I'm actually going to go the other direction as well, because this place is going to get more wear. So I'm going to go diagonal back in the other direction. This one is next. And then diagonal off the other way. And I'm making sure that this is anchored into the toe decreases, because those are a little sturdier. Okay, so that is that one done. We snip that. And we'll do this other end. Get my hand in here. Okay. I unthreaded it again. I am going to thread that and then stick it through the fabric for a second so I can get my hand in here without undoing it. Okay. And then do some diagonal work. This one's a little short, so I'm trying to hold this pinch between, you know, where the thread overlaps with the needle, to make sure it doesn't come out while I'm weaving in the end. So, and then go diagonal in the other way. That'll do. Okay, I'm gonna snip, turn the whole thing inside out, and our repair is finished.